Hi there, Malcolm here for my 372nd Booktube video, and today I'll be bringing you a review for Dungeon Crawler Carl Book 4, Gate of the Feral Gods by Matt Dinian. And like with the rest of the series so far, I listened to this on Audible, wonderfully read to me by Jeff Hayes of the fantastic Sound Booth Theatre, arguably one of the best ways of enjoying this book. Being book 4 of a series, it's difficult to talk about it without going to spoiler territory. And frankly, what are you doing watching a review of book 4 of a series if you've not read books 1, 2 or 3, unless you're vaguely interested, in which case I feel safe going over spoiler territory. However, just in case, I'll start off spoiler free and then announce when I want to go into spoilers. So in this one, Carl and his ex-girlfriend's cat, Princess Donut, enter the 5th floor of the dungeon. Yes, it gets a bit confusing because the number of books doesn't match the number of dungeon, because in book 1 they do levels 1 and 2, and then it's been 1 level per book after that so far. And once again, it's a completely different level to what we've had before. First two were quite similar in that there were tunnels and chambers with different creatures running around, and were treated pretty much as the training levels just to get going. Level 3 is a bit more open world with towns, a bit of ground between towns, and it had a circus in the towns and introduced quests. The 4th floor was the Iron Tangle, which is all train lines, trains and tunnels and stations, and it's all very confusing but brilliant. In this one, they are in effectively a giant piece of bubble wrap where each bubble contains 4 quadrants, and the crawlers are split relatively evenly amongst each quadrant across all the bubbles. And what's really impressive is each bubble has a unique scenario, story, set of creatures, all the rest of it. However, we only really know about Carl's one because that's the one he happens to be in and he's the character we're following, as he and Donna have to try and defeat their quadrant of their bubble before they can go and help the other crawlers with their quadrants. And then, from then on, their bubbles. Yeah, so there's new NPCs, there's new creatures, there's new quests, and the story largely revolves around the titular item, the Gate of the Feral Gods, the use of which has a certain inevitability to it. And I really enjoyed how this felt completely different to the previous floors and built upon what we've established so far in terms of how the dungeon works and what goes on, and the interaction between the surviving crawlers, but also the development behind the scenes. There's a lot of galactic money invested in this game. There's a lot of infighting and politicking, and a lot of that is filtering down to the crawlers and affecting them in certain ways. And there's a pretty significant thing involving Carl and Donut's media manager, Zev, which has some real insidious nods at how productions and corporations are managed and run. And we have a continuation of the saga involving the 2 crawlers that started hunting Carl in the original book, and a bit more interaction between the other top 10 crawlers. Not all of them, but we have a bit more development about a lot of these other crawlers. Some good, some bad, some pretty awful, and a lot of goddammit donuts. And even at least one goddammit Carl by Donut, which I really appreciated. When I started this series, I didn't know really what I was getting into, and really enjoyed the humour and ridiculousness of book 1. But as the series has got on, it has matured. The humour is still there, but it's not quite such at the forefront, as the dwindling number of surviving crawlers really hammers home that this is happening to real people. It's a real life or death situation, and some of the things that the dungeon has done to manipulate the crawlers are pretty awful. So I'm not saying it's less funny, but there's certainly a much deeper level of cynicism and satire going on here, as the story really unpicks the malevolent machinations of corporations, how these people can live or die, fight or wound, lose everything, everyone, kill somebody else, all for the benefit of a corporation to get money, or to go up another rung on the political ladder, or to bring another entity down on their political ladder. You know, very much a gods playing chess with men type scenario. So it is a lot deeper, a lot more heart-wrenching than before, and it does occasionally hit you in the feels as you realise just what has happened to this individual, what is going on with this individual. So I'm getting a hell of a lot more than I was bargaining for. I'm still loving it, I'm still enjoying it, but for its laddish immaturity, and there's plenty of that, which is great, it is an extremely mature and serious book as well. And the fact that books seem to be getting thicker and thicker, longer and longer. This was just over 18 hours long, and I've just started the next one, which is over 21 hours, or over 700 pages in book form. Not only is there more going on in the story but there's more to be said as well. Absolutely brilliant, booktastic. Spoiler territory! Thanks for that. Yeah, so there's a few significant things that happen in this one. As I mentioned, Zev, their media manager, is taken off the case. She's interfered too much. She's too sympathetic to the crawlers she's managing, and is replaced by someone who's far less pleasant, far less forgiving, and not at all on Carl and Donut's side. And the things that happen to Zev, or alluded to happen to Zev, are pretty downright awful. However, Carl, in a very clever, cunning way, does get his revenge on this replacement, leading to an intervention where we learn that in the entire history of the dungeon, this one's had more admin deaths than any other dungeon event. And a big offshoot of this intervention is that Carl and Donut return to the dungeon having missed 5 days. So they've shot down the leaderboard, they're still just on it, but everyone else has overtaken them, and Cartier, who is still part of their team, has gone on to manage quite well without them and has done a whole bunch of stuff, meaning they've got to do a hell of a lot of catching up, both by experience and by just what's going on, what's the dynamic, what's happened. So that's a really interesting new dynamic that the books are throwing out of this intervention and the penalties that can happen. We also see the continuation of Chris's story. Carl met Chris and Brandon with the old folks on level 2. Brandon died in level 3 after Chris and Brandon had a falling out and gone their separate ways. We find out why in this one. Maggie May has chosen her race to be the parasitic worm and has burrowed into Chris's brain. And so there's a really interesting and devastating storyline with Chris and just what Carl and Donut have to do about it. Now, Brandon's death on the 3rd floor was the first real gut punch. It sort of came out of nowhere. You know, we knew we were going to lose people, but it was just so sudden and off camera, and this message is by a deceased crawler. It's just so heartless. And then this thing's happened to Chris. It's kind of a double punch. And then finally, the stuff with the Gate of the Feral Gods, which is a game-breaking MacGuffin that the AI broke so many rules putting into the dungeon in the first place. Carl was never supposed to be able to get it and use it, although he does, causing massive ramifications. There's a huge legal battle that goes on when he gets it, causing the dungeon to pause as another legal battle takes place, another one, and then when he does use it, all hell breaks loose, ultimately resulting in him finding religion, worshipping a god, and has unlocked a whole new section of the game in terms of achievements, church quests, benefits, but also things that he now no longer is allowed to do, which he's still trying to work out. And I love how this series, as each book comes out, as each level unfolds, that another layer is peeled away from this simple running around corridors, fighting mobs and getting their stuff. That's all going on, but there's so much work. It's exponentially getting bigger and bigger. And ironically, as the number of crawlers diminishes quite rapidly, by the end of the book we're down to less than 100,000. There are more characters. Carl is helping more people, meeting more people who in turn also know other people. And the story continues to build upon itself, getting more and more complex, but at the same time, we're for the most part following Carl's point of view, Carl's attempt to survive and bring as many crawlers down to the next level with him, while at the same time trying to screw over the institution that's put this thing in place in the first place and ruining it for everybody. Something he kind of does manage at the end of the book, and I will keep that one a bit secret, but it is rather cool. So there you go, that's my thoughts on The Gate of the Feral Gods. Have you read it? What did you think about it? Comment down below, please. But as usual, if you have nothing nice to say, then please keep it to yourself. Thank you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and other YouTube things if you want. And until next time, see you later.